Hey there, in this video, I want to talk to you about the 5 key takeaways that I learned regarding making and breaking habits from this book that I'm going to be going through here for the next 30 days. It's called Do It for a Day. It's written by Mark Batterson, How to Make or Break Any Habit in 30 Days. And the habit that I'm going to be working on is actually recording a daily video. So I'm going to try it for 30 days. Hopefully I'm able to make it each day, publishing one video per day. And we'll see what happens. But I have 5 key takeaways. And number 4, please stick with me at least till number 4, because it's a really great way to visualize some things whenever it comes to habits that we do in our daily life. But the first point that I want to talk to you about is habitualization. And Mark talks, and by the way, this is all coming just from the introduction. And if you can see here, I literally, the introduction to this book is phenomenal. It gets me excited about what the book's going to have, and maybe the stories that he's going to be able to share. But whenever it comes to habitualization, he says that 45% of our daily behavior is automatic. And he says habitualization saves us tremendous time and energy, but the savings come at a cost. And specifically, what he is talking about as far as what that cost is from going, like whether it's conscious or unconscious, basically we have thoughts coming into our brain and we have decisions being made. And I can't remember the exact number, but it's something like 45 or 60,000 decisions per day are made. And let's say it's 60,000 decisions. Whenever we get to the point where we're saving the time and energy by having something consciously be done, that's good in a sense because you're saving time and energy, but sometimes those are bad habits. And whenever we do the bad habits over and over and over again, then that's a recipe for disaster. So I think that was one key concept. The second thing, he talks about the basal ganglia. And I guess the basal ganglia is the part of our brain where habits are stored. And he says the basal ganglia is our chief executive officer when it comes to everyday decisions. And he talks about some researchers from MIT who had built upon B.F. Skinner's research from previously. And these guys came up with what's called a habit loop. And if you've not heard of the habit loop before, it's actually what Charles Duhigg, and he wrote a book called The Power of Habit. And that's what Duhigg's habit loop is. It's cue, routine, and reward. It's a 3-step process is what he has. And it's slightly different but similar to James Clear with his book Atomic Habits. He has a 4-step process where he says it's cue, craving, response, reward. And that's what James Clear's habit loop. Personally, I have my own favorite. I think that 3 is a really nice, good, balanced figure. So I like what Charles Duhigg does with cue, routine, and reward. But I like to use acronyms that are more memorable. And for me, CAR, cue, action, reward, is something that sticks in my head a little bit better. So that's the second main point. Is there's a habit loop. And the third thing that we want to talk about is that I found was pretty interesting. And by the way, he's going to approach a lot of this stuff from a faith-based perspective, which is pretty awesome too. He talks about Jesus giving the Sermon on the Mount. And I think this is kind of cool where Jesus's Sermon on the Mount, it's actually 6 bad habits that he's going to try to get people to unlearn. So just as an example, Jesus was uninstalling the old default settings like an eye for an eye. He was updating and upgrading that with a new mindset to turn the other cheek. So I think that's kind of cool. And basically it's like, you've heard that it was said, but I'm telling you this. You've heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, but I'm telling you, turn the other cheek. And and literally those are like habits that have been going on for centuries where people, that was the default way to return the favor was, somebody does something bad to you, you do it bad back to them equally. And so that's kind of cool how he tied that in. Number 4, this is the one that I was telling you about that I found is really a cool visualization and insight. And I think you might agree. But anyway, so there was a guy, his name was Bob Specca, and he ended up being the domino world record holder. And and this was back in like 1974, and there was a guy who started to study dominoes. He was a physicist, and his name was Lorne Whitehead. And what White ended up discovering is that a domino, if you have a 2-inch domino, it's able to topple over something 1.5 times the size of it. So if you have a 2-inch domino, it's going to be able to topple over a 3-inch domino. If you have a 3-inch domino, it's going to be able to topple over a 4.5-inch domino. Now, this is where it gets really kind of cool. So by the time you get to the 18th domino, you could knock over the Leaning Tower of Pisa if you started with a 2-inch domino. That's kind of crazy, right? By the 21st domino, you could take down the Washington Monument. And then by the time you get to the 23rd domino, you could literally knock over and flatten the Eiffel Tower. That's kind of cool. What I like is his ending. It's not really a quote, but his ending statement on that. If you knock one over, the sky is the limit. And I think for anybody who is trying to make or break habits, I think it's kind of cool to think that we just have to line up the dominoes. And once you take that first one, it should be able to continue to propel you, and the sky is the limit. And I think that's a great thing that we can always look forward to, is knowing just take the actions and get the work started going, and just kind of let them topple over one upon another. Okay, and then the fifth thing, the introduction here, the fifth thing to take away, he wants us to pick a habit. And you can work along through this too. Pick a habit, and he wants it to be three things. He wants it to be meaningful, he wants it to be maintainable and measurable. And it's interesting because it really, whenever James Clear talks in his book also about behavior change and why people aren't able to do it, and it's because they start out on the outside ring. Like he talks, and I'll actually make another video on this too, about circles and about people start on the what, the goal, versus the how, and then the why that's in the middle. And then the why is really where behavior change needs to start. And whenever you look at these three things that Mark's talking about, making it meaningful, maintainable, and measurable, it literally falls right in alignment with your why, your what, and your how and your what. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed those 5 tips on making and breaking habits out of the introduction from the book, Do It for a Day. And if you want to follow along, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, or if you really want to make sure you don't miss anything, subscribe to my email newsletter. If you go to brandonyeager.com, there's a button there you can subscribe. And actually, there's also, right now, I believe I have the opportunity, you can download my Life Rocks planner, which is what I use every single day for planning out my weeks and days, which turn into months and years. And so yeah, feel free to subscribe. If you have any comments, if you want to either hit me up on Twitter, or if you want to leave them below the video on YouTube, whatever's easiest for you. If you have any questions, or if there's anything that you think that I might be able to help you with, please let me know. I'm here to serve, and I hope you make it a great day. We'll talk to you in the next video.